Last week I brought you the first part of my F1 2022 speculation, where I talked about my wish list for cars, tracks and racing series I'd like to see in the game. If you missed that video for any reason, be sure to click the card on the screen now, or click the link in the description below. This week, I want to talk about the second half of my wish list, including game modes I'd like to see, additional features I think should be in the game, and a final roundup of what might be possible and what might just be a little too far out of reach for this year's entry. I'm Mark from Racing Games, and welcome to part 2 of my features speculation for F1 2022. Just like with last week's video, this is all just hearsay right now, with nothing confirmed, so take everything I say with a pinch of salt. Again though, Codemasters, please take notes. There are some brilliant ideas here. Right, on with the video. F1 2021 introduced us to Breaking Point, the first fully narrative-driven game mode in the F1 series, and the second to be story-focused. Breaking Point sees you fill the racing boots of Aiden Jackson, but we've mentioned that enough times now that I'm sure you get the idea. Now, without giving away the ending, Breaking Point does leave the door open for the story to continue, and what better way to do that than in F1 2022? Much like the journey carried across multiple FIFA titles, continuing Breaking Point would allow those who want more story to their racing to scratch that itch, without the need to create an all-new story or interrupt the current career modes. The great thing about Formula 1 is it doesn't just end in December. The rivalries always carry over, as does the pain of missing out on the world title. But before I start raging about the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix again, I'll quickly move on. The point I'm trying to make is just because Breaking Point has an ending in F1 2021, that doesn't mean it's completely over. F1 2022's Breaking Point can pick up from the next season, following Jackson on the next stage of his racing career. The characters would largely be the same, with new ones added to flesh out the story where needed. It would also be a great opportunity to show Jackson interacting with the current F1 grid more, rather than them just sitting there during a press conference. Yeah, we're looking at you, Lando and Esteban. But there's more to the F1 series than just racing. I know, it's a racing game, but I'm talking about things like pre-season testing and off-track activities. I've read a lot of comments and questions from people within the community about pre-season testing, and I think it should be part of career mode. One of my bugbears with F1 2021 was the fact the first time I got to truly experience the performance of my car was out on turn 1 of Bahrain. You know, one of the hardest first corners on the F1 calendar. Imagine a real F1 driver in that situation. It just doesn't happen. Why not add a form of pre-season testing to the game, either at the traditional track of Spain, or even allowing the player to choose where to take the car for testing? In my team, this can come at the cost of team budget, just like in the real world. Sure, you could fly the team and car all the way out to Interlagos, but say goodbye to your aerodynamics budget for the year. Personally, I'd stick to tradition and head to Spain. I need to brush up on my Spanish anyway. This is where Mugello would be a good track to include in the game. If you're driving a Ferrari in career mode, or even if you have Ferrari as a supplier, you could run your tests at Mugello for a reduced cost. That might sound like a bit of favouritism, but what's F1 without that anyway? Here's another idea, a classic Grand Prix career mode. If the classic cars are added back in from F1 2020, plus a couple of extra additions, why not use them in a new career mode? Just picture yourself in Nigel Mansell's title-winning Williams FW14, racing against a collection of other iconic cars from the 1990s. You might need some form of equal performance to keep things balanced, but it would be a really fun way to race both on and offline. To go back to tracks for a minute, what if these classic Grand Prix took place on variations of the current F1 circuits? Finally, we can experience the current Gen F1 cars racing down the Farm Straight and around Bridge at Silverstone, or even driving the pre-1995 configuration of Imola. Forgetting the colossal amount of work this would require from Codemasters, I would love to see this in F1 2022. As a compromise, being able to race classic cars in a championship around the current F1 tracks would still be a lot of fun. For challenges, why not use the formula of the F1 esports challenges from last year, but rather than taking Hamilton to victory in Hungary, you instead attempt to snatch the 1994 championship off of Michael Schumacher as Damon Hill. Recreating iconic F1 moments but changing history would be a real appeal to the game for me. Finally, here are some other ideas and suggestions I've seen in various places over the last few months. The first is red flags. Some have said there's no point to red flags as no one wants their race interrupted, but actually I do see where it could come into play. A serious crash could bring out a red flag, with you needing to return to the pits much as you would for a pit stop or at the end of a practice or qualifying run. Then, much like in practice, you can choose whether to change your car setup or not, without breaking the rules of course, and even choosing whether to sit and wait it out or speed up time. Any damage to your car could be repaired, tyres changed, and strategy altered if need be. Once the red flag is ended, the race can then be restarted from a standing start. It's a little detail that doesn't really add much to the game, but I have seen it suggested a lot, and I do quite like it as a concept. Another suggestion I've seen is for cross-platform play. Currently this isn't possible, and we all know this isn't a choice by the developers, but instead by our console overlords. But with more and more game franchises turning to crossplay, it's surely only a matter of time before F1 joins the list. There may not even be the issue of PC players dominating either, especially with console being compatible with certain wheels. Now league racing will no longer be restricted to specific consoles, instead being open to anyone with the game. I like that idea too, and in fact we posted an article on that subject not so long ago. I highly recommend you all go and check it out, once you finish watching this video of course. The final idea, from me at least, is for more options in interviews, and maybe even the addition of pre-race press conferences. This in no way would affect anything that happens on track. However, with the acclaim system now impacted by your answers to Claire, why not go that one step further by having press conferences also affect your team? Will Buxton would be the perfect person to be asking you these questions, as well as asking you the questions at the factory still of course. Ultimately, I'd want to see fellow drivers react to your answers too, but I don't think this would happen anytime soon. It would also be nice if Claire stopped asking me why I'm the equivalent of a human pinball when I only hit Alonso once. Stop asking me about crashes, Claire! Anyway, those are my thoughts on additional features in F1 2022, so let's head to the final corner and sum everything up. As I said at the top of both videos, this is all speculation for now, but there are a lot of features that I've mentioned today that I think are feasible for F1 2022, if not 2023 next year. If I was to make a priorities list of everything from both videos, I would definitely put the tracks at the top, along with a follow-on to Breaking Point. After that, probably pre-season testing being added into the career modes, as well as classic cars coming back. Everything after that is a much lower priority, but would make the game just that little bit better if it were to be added. I would understand if track variations aren't possible, but considering Assetto Corsa runs with multiple track configurations, I would be a little disappointed if it wasn't added at some point, and the same goes for being able to choose which generation of car you could race in. Overall though, F1 2021 was a very solid game, and I'm very confident F1 2022 will at least match it if not exceed it. Codemasters have kept their cards very close to their chest so far, but considering this will be the first F1 game developed entirely under the ownership of EA, Codies now have a far greater resource pool at their disposal, and hopefully we'll see the benefits straight away. Have I missed out any ideas? Which of these ideas would you most like to see in F1 2022? Let us know in the comments below. For now though, thank you very much for watching. I've been Mark from Racing Games. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed both this video and last week's part 1. And now I'm off to fire up the FW14 for a few practice laps of Silverstone, just in case Codemasters have been listening after all.